It is Thursday, September 26th, and you are listening to Eric on the Call. We have a bit of different circumstances today because my campus is completely shut down. No radio station, no none of that. So we are doing this from my room. Well, not my room, but a spare room I have. But it's none of the point. So again, welcome into Eric on the show. Eric Edmondson, your host, here with you, and we have a great show. God willing to talk about. I promise it's going to be a fun one. Now, if you're a loyal listener and you've listened to the show multiple times before, this is going to be very different. Obviously, because of where I am, this will be an edited video, much more than usual. But we have some big topics to talk about with some big guests coming up, including the WNBA and the Chicago White Sox. With the WNBA keeping going in the playoffs, we're going to bring in one of the great minds of the Piedmont campus, Miss Chloe Spradlin, to talk about them. And with the White Sox, they haven't broken the record yet, much to my chagrin. But we will be bringing in the most loyal Southsider in Georgia, Dr. Joe Dennis. Now, I said with that we were talking about the WNBA playoffs, and unfortunately, we are going in a little bit late. But we're still going to talk about who has what it takes to win. So we're going to cut to that in a minute. But if you want the true radio show experience, as this show is intended to be, take a pause, take a break, go listen to this song, and then come back when you're finished, and we'll be right back to it. Because in the meantime, we got a throwback to Tide You Over. We're throwing it back to 2012 for a band that I have always been in love with. We're going to have some fun. The band has been on an indefinite hiatus for, I believe, maybe 8, 9 years now. I don't think we're going to see them together ever again, but we do have this still. Here is We Are Young by Fun on what would be 98.7 Roar Radio.
The WNBA playoffs are in still in the first round, but we do have a couple eliminations. Both the Dream and the Storm have been booted out, probably a little expectedly. But the teams that kicked them out, the Liberty and the Aces, that we expected them out of. They're two very good teams.
Yeah, honestly, I expect. I mean, with the Dream in particular, I knew that was just going to be an easy sweep. I mean, with the series between the Storm and the Aces, it was competitive, but at the end of the day, you always knew that the Aces were never going to lose that. So you gotta be happy with where the Storm are looking at this moment, especially since the retirement of Super a couple years ago. They're still in a little bit of a rebuild, but yeah, I think the Storm put up a good fight. The Dream, I think they did the best they could. We all saw that block from Ryan Howard, but the Dream were never gonna knock off the Liberty.
No, and already now the Lynx and the Sun are up in their respective series over the Mercury and the Fever. Those series still going on. That Fever Sun game is very close. And just overall, let's go through some of these teams. So we'll start off with let's go with the Mercury. What do you think about the Mercury, Chloe?
Well, I mean, the Mercury there, I think that right now the only thing they're doing is just playing for DT. I feel kind of bad because you know that Diana Taurasi she's not the player she used to be. Of course, she's still great for her age and she's still putting up numbers, but at the end of the day, she's just not. She's not the DT we once knew. She's not the DT of old. So I think they're trying to play for her, but I don't see much happening in that regard.
Yeah, it's definitely an older roster, battle-tested roster for the Mercury. And in the Fever's case, they got Caitlin Clark, but also they got Boston, they got Smith, and they got Kelsey Mitchell. They were all shooting very well in the regular season. Maybe just a year too early for them.
Yeah, they got pretty much the opposite of the Mercury right now. They're just so young. They're so green. I think Mitchell in the last couple weeks has kind of been on the downside. So if she doesn't get it, because here's the thing, no Caitlin Clark, no Barty. Obviously, Caitlin Clark's not performing. In game one, she didn't. She got locked down by the one. But I think that if everyone and all the supporting cast is up, then they'll be set to go. But I mean, last night it was. I mean, we saw
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how they're looking next season. They're very fast. They're a very fast team. I think that's a little bit too much for their own good, because it leads to a lot of shakiness and turnovers. It's a lot of over reliance on offense. So I would expect coming into next year a lot more focus on the defensive end of the ball.
Yeah, I think got a lot of potential. I mean, listen, they made the playoffs. The Beaver made the playoffs for the first time this year since 2016. Like, you can't tell me that's not an automatic impact and send it back. So they've got a big future ahead of themselves. The one they can keep building that chemistry and maybe get a couple more assets in the offseason in the draft. So I think they're set. I think they're good to go. So, and plus, just the way that this league is going forward, they will have their choice, but to be pushed to their heights and see how far they can go, especially with three new teams announced coming in 2025, 6 and 7 respectively. So I'm really excited for the Fever where they go. The only problem right now is their fans right now.
Right, a little too eager. So let's preview one of the matchups, so the semifinals, the Aces and the Liberty. This is a heavyweight bout of heavyweight bouts. This might be the finals before the finals, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, the repeat of the finals from last year, it was a great matchup. I believe it was a 4 or 5 last year. Um, it was solid. It was solid. And honestly, the Liberty, of course the Aces are great. Asia Wilson, Kelsey Plum, Chelsea Gray, but I was really shocked that the Liberty didn't win last year. But I mean, at the same time, you got to look at this team now. This Liberty team only lost 8 games in the regular season. They're so good. They've got a super team. John Paul Jones, Sabrina Ionescu, and then Stewie up there too. They're a super team for sure. And the Avengers were assembled 2 years ago. It's only a matter of time until they get this one here. I see this one going all the way up to final elimination game. I'm really trying to think of who could win it, but I'm just excited for a really good matchup. Same with the Aces; they've been a little inconsistent this year, but I mean that's probably saw white T-shirt. Asia Wilson said, I'm not showing up in a good outfit until we win a game." So it was one of the best things I saw from the season. But I mean Asia Wilson, second consecutive MVP. She's her, Kelsey Plum, Chelsea Gray, like I said, especially with the addition of Kate Martin in the draft. They're solid. They're solid. And this is going to be another great series.
You definitely got to respect the champs. The Liberty don't have too many holes in that roster. I think can be said the same about the Liberty that you said about the Aces. That little inconsistency issue. They've been held to 70 points by both Chicago and Minnesota this year. So sometimes the shooters shoot, sometimes they don't. But they're averaging 10 3-pointers a game, Chloe.
I mean, yeah, that's just the thing. I mean, especially with Sabrina Ionescu on the court, you're obviously going to have a deep threat from outside the arc. So as long as, same with John Paul Jones, Kate Martin, not necessarily that 3-point threat, but she can hit a dagger every once in a while. And Asia Wilson's starting to work on her threes, especially in the last season or two. So they've very soon on the other side, Brianna Stewart talked about. So if they are hot, they're good. I think defensively they're always pretty sound, but if their shooters are hot, then they'll be set, they'll be good to go, and I think they'll go all the way. But if they have an off game, any sort of off game, it can derail any sort of momentum that they've got going on there. But you're right, not a lot of holes in this roster. I'm really excited to see how they go. They've just been, I mean, they have been out and out the best team in the league this year, so it's a little concerning, not often do you see the best team in the league actually end up going all the way, so can they really have those expectations be fulfilled?
Absolutely. And speaking of strong defenses, going to the other side of the semifinals, the Sun and the Lynx. The Sun have an incredible defense. They have held all opponents all season long to 75 points and under a game.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, DeJounte Carrington just won Most Improved Player,
Yep.
which 100% deserved. She's been phenomenal, and the shift that they put in against the Fever in game one, they only held Caitlin Clark to 11 points, 8 assists, which I mean, 8 assists for any point guard is good, obviously, but 11 points for Caitlin Clark standards is not good at all. And they were phenomenal. They really shut out the Fever in that series. I think the Sun personally are really the team to beat here. I think
Mhm.
that they're just slipping under the radar right now.
I was gonna say the exact same thing, Chloe, because in my opinion, look, you can get hot all you want to in the playoffs, but if you run into a defensive juggernaut, there's nothing you can do against that. I think the Sun have pretty easily the best defensive-minded team in the playoffs right now. They're great in the turnover rates. Like I said, 75 points. They're pretty hard to beat in that category.
Yeah, I think that they are really the team to beat right now. They're slipping under the radar, just trying to get a little bit more traction. But they sometimes you just don't see them getting that media attention or some of that. We fear the Sun, like teams fear the Liberty or fear the Aces. They slipped under in third place, I believe, or second. They finished second and third in the seeding. So I think that they're gonna. I think they could take it over the Lynx. The Lynx are so good too, but I think the Lynx, as long as if Nafisa Collier is having a game, they're obviously good to go. But if Nafisa Collier for the Lynx isn't up, and she's not up to her best, then it's going to be easy pickings for the Sun.
Absolutely, and a lot of that Minnesota Lynx scheme is ran around Nafisa Collier. But what I wonder about the Lynx is they're a great team, great roster, and everything like that. Did they peak a little bit too early because they've been 13-2 since the break? So they came out of the break and they were red hot already. So you always talk about going on runs and such in these types of sports, but you don't really talk about when those runs come and how ineffective you can be after them. For the Lynx, it's all about if the threes keep on falling.
Yeah, it all goes back to Nafisa Collier. I mean, look, she only a couple games ago, in game one against the Mercury, she put up 38. That was a career high for her
She would have been
in
the
the
MVP.
playoffs, and she was legit. She was obviously amazing, but can she keep that up? You got to think about. What about all this travel? What about the stress of playoffs and the expectations? The Lynx are historically one of the best teams in the WNBA. What about that sort of pressure that you get from the fan base of bringing the championship back to the city? So I'm a little concerned for the Lynx. I think the Sun are going to take them. I think it's going to go right around game 4 probably. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. But I think this one is just as much of a must-watch matchup as the Liberty and the Aces. But unfortunately, the Lynx and the Sun aren't quite getting the media coverage that the Lynx and that the Liberty and the Aces are.
I definitely agree with you. I think the Suns are going to come out of this series because I don't know how much you can rely on the three-pointer. Cheryl Reeve is pretty open about how she wants to run that three-point offense. And if the three-pointers aren't working, I don't know if this team can compete in the paint, especially with such a defense as Suns. So I think we're both pretty agreeing on the Suns moving on. I think the Liberty also have a chance to move on as well. I think that's more of a coin flip, the Aces and Liberty series. But who do we think's facing the Suns here, Chloe? Because that's kind of what we're boiling down to.
Oh man, this is tough because obviously both the Aces and the Liberty have the experience of going on past the semifinal, making it to the final. But I mean, it's a different beast when you're going against the team that took your dream away last year. The Liberty lost last year, and they shouldn't have. Obviously, the Aces, not to take anything away from the Aces, they've got a great team, they've got a great head coach in Becky Hammond, but I mean, you put together this super team in hopes of going on and winning a championship, and they didn't do it last year. It's more so, can they use that to fuel them this year, especially against an Aces side that they finished fourth. They're pretty turning seeding. They finished fourth. They were really inconsistent. We saw Asia. I'm going to keep bringing this up. Asia Wilson pulling out their white T-shirts game after game because they could not win. This is an inconsistent Aces side. Of course, they picked it up in the last couple weeks, so maybe it's the Aces are starting to peak a little bit, and maybe the Liberty not ready for that. I think it's mainly, do they have that championship winning mindset, or do they not? And I think this series is going to really show that because you can have all the super team players that you want. If you don't have the mindset to go on and win a championship, you're not going to go on and win a championship. So I'm looking the lips for this matchup. I'm really excited.
It's going to be very, very exciting. So those matches start on Sunday, September the 29th, the first game between the Aces and Liberty starting at 3 p.m., the first game between the Lynx and the Sun starting at 8:30. in the evening. Chloe Spradlin, thank you so much for joining the quote-unquote show. Not very live here today, as everyone's been relegated to no classes and no facilities.
Oh man, thanks for having me. I love talking to Devin. Hopefully that you stay dry, man. It's gonna be awful tonight.
Yeah, I'm gonna work on it. Hopefully it doesn't get too weird and wild up here. Chloe, thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem.
Alrighty, so I am here with Dr. Joe Dennis. I call him the most loyal Southsider in Georgia. Dr. Joe Dennis, thank you for joining me today on, not live, but you know what? It's still somewhat of a radio show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Eric. And it is funny because there are too many White Sox fans in Georgia. And whenever I happen to randomly see someone, with a White Sox shirt or cap on, I'll always talk to them. And because I'm like, oh, I have something in common with you.
Absolutely, yeah, common and pain, as we'll get to talk about. So, Joe, we have been kind of saving this talk for when the White Sox break the record. Well, the Jerks keep winning.
I know, and that would be the most White Sox thing to do, for them to White Sox the record. And, at the games, the last couple games against the Angels at home that they played, fans were literally booing the team when they went ahead in the late innings. I've never seen anything like it.
I mean, look, when it's like you obviously want it to happen now. Like, all right, we've been on this journey for 6 months to be the worst team in baseball. Let's do the thing. Come on.
Exactly. Might as well. And personally, and I know I've talked a little bit with you about this, but I really want this stain on the White Sox, because me and every other White Sox fan out there have a we share a common enemy, I should say. And that enemy is the owner of the Chicago White Sox, Jerry Reinsdorf. And he has completely just made decision after decision after decision over the last few years that have just led to where we are now. And we can see it. Sox fans can see it. And so I want him to feel a little pain. I'm not wishing harm on him, but, just to feel that, that emotional pain of knowing, oh, wow, I've owned the worst team in baseball history. Like, I've run this team into the ground.
Absolutely, and let's talk about Jerry. He's on the team for as long as ever. Won World Series for him, but what's more tough about Reinsdorf is that he has been surrounded by, what do you say, the same 5 front office staff for the entirety of that?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, he has kept his core group around. Kenny Williams, who he fired actually last August for the first time, was the first time he made movement in the general manager's office. And when he fired Kenny Williams, Kenny was around since the 1990s in the organization, and Rick Hahn was around since the late 1990s as well. And so, he did move on from that, and that gave White Sox fans a glimmer of hope when that happened. But then 3 days later, he announced Chris Getz, who has never been a GM, of course, who was in charge of the White Sox minor league system, which at the time Chris Getz got the job was ranked somewhere in the bottom, like 28, 29, something like that at the bottom. So he ran one of the worst MLB minor league systems, and his reward for that, congratulations.
You've been promoted.
You're a new GM.
Yeah. And we talked about this a couple days ago. It's like, look, and hiring internally is absolutely fine. It's like, look, the prospect guy, we get it. It makes sense. The problem is that prospect, what prospects have the White Sox produced that have been actually capital G good under Chris Getz? Luis Rivera, maybe? That's about it.
Maybe Garrett Crochet, but that was really luck more than anything, because no one expected Crochet to be this good, especially after his surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not even going to give him credit for that.
mentioned all the prospects, so let's take a step back and let's go to what year would it be? About 2017, 2016, when things started to take a little bit of change. You know, you start to get guys in the system like Tim Anderson. You get guys like from Latin America like Eloy and Luis, and then it all culminates in that big 2019 season where I would say the White Sox really arrived.
Right. They did arrive, and they had, I think, one of the key components too. They had a young manager, and he was a Latino manager, so they had a manager who could relate, well to the ball players, and Ricky Renteria. And I think, they grew up together kind of with their manager, and the kind of the slogan for the team was they're Ricky's boys. Ricky's boys don't quit. And so they had a surprisingly decent season in 2019, and then in 2020, which was of course the COVID season, they made the playoffs. And at that time, everything was, White Sox fans were excited because things were happening basically a year ahead of schedule. No one thought that would happen. And then in 2021, which was kind of, the pinnacle of everything, they won the division, and they won the AL Central, and then things just fell off the face of the planet. And one key move I think we can't deny that happened was they fired Ricky Renteria because they said, okay, we need a manager to get us to the next level. Ricky was great at, building this young team into winners, but we need someone, who we expect to get to the playoffs. We need someone who will get us to the World Series. And the GM of the time, Rick Hahn, wanted to hire AJ Hinch, but instead, Jerry stepped in and hired his longtime friend, Mr. Tony La Russa.
Mm-hmm. And that's what we opened with, right? The root of the White Sox problem. Doesn't matter if they're 125 losses. Doesn't matter if their manager has never managed before and it's just some blown out prospect, which they are thinking about promoting Grady Sizemore to a full-time position next year, or the injuries. It's Jerry Reinsdorf. Reinsdorf is the pure issue here because he hired his buddy. And La Russa is still with the organization.
Exactly. Yeah, he's still with the organization, even though La Russa could not. He had to resign as manager for health-related reasons, and no one wants that on him. But he's still an advisor, a special advisor to the White Sox, and it's funny because there's the White Sox trying to hide this, but what ends up happening is some people in the White Sox media, the Chicago media, sports media, they will see Tony La Russa at the ballpark, or their former manager Pedro Grifol will make a comment of, well, Tony blah blah blah. He'll slip up and say, I trust what Tony says, and so, but they'll never officially say Tony La Russa is still with the organization, but it's very obvious that he is.
Mm-hmm. And during this spiral from 2021 to now, there was 2022 where they were quite literally the most mid team in baseball. They finished 81 and 81. I think they had like a 0 run differential. And in 23, I think it was kind of like you saw what was coming. You saw the train wreck happening from a million miles away. You saw what 2024 was going to be.
Exactly, and they hired Pedro Grifol from the Royals, and I mean, no one knew anything of him, so I'm not gonna lie and say, oh, that was a horrible hire. But again, instead of getting a known commodity like their crosstown, rivals the Cubs did when they hired Craig Counsell, they went and got someone who never had any managing experience, and I think a But I think, I kind of feel for Rick Hahn when he made those contracts because it's like the only way you can build a ball club, a successful ball club with Jerry Reinsdorf as the owner because he will not approve any major contracts.
No, and it was very interesting to see that Reinsdorf, and I wonder where the rumor or how the talk started that they were courting Bryce Harper, they were courting Manny Machado back in 2019. They were trying to recruit them to it. So I wonder. I think even they had Manny Machado. They got him a stadium tour. But I wonder where that came out of. Was that Jerry, or was that Rick Hahn trying to be as earnest as he can and bringing a superstar?
The White Sox have had a history of teasing their fans like this, and I really think that's what it was. It was really just a tease to kind of show, hey, it's a new era for the White Sox. We're going to get the big name. But in the end, they didn't get those players because in the end they weren't willing, or Reinsdorf wasn't willing to open up the pocketbook. And, I think one thing that was really telling and really angered me more than anything as a fan was last year when he first did fire his GM, Rick Hahn, and Kenny Williams, the VP of the team. Jerry Reinsdorf did a very rare press conference in which he talked about the state of the team, and they asked him about spending money, and his answer was, I'm tired of hearing talking about spending money, and he rattled off some teams like the Royals, of course, which is his favorite team, that they didn't spend money and they won the World Series, and he's like, I'll tell you one thing, we're not gonna sign Ohtani, and he laughed, he's like, that'd be ridiculous, and he laughed, and the thing that angered me, I didn't think, of course, they would ever sign Ohtani.
Right.
You can even argue that, that his contract, no one could afford that. But the fact that he would laugh about it and just like, there's not a chance that would ever happen, that's kind of offensive to fans, I think.
It's not even a slap in the face, it's a gut punch.
Exactly.
It's just pure disrespect. He's so detached from reality, he has no idea what's going on. Something that we haven't talked about recently, but I don't know if it's still in the works, but I know it was definitely brought up during the season. Jerry's trying to leave the South Side. He's trying to get new funding for a new ballpark.
The stadium they play in, now it's guaranteed rate field. It's only 30 years old. It's a nice stadium, and the thing is they did a bunch of redevelopment of the stadium just within the past 10 years, and it is a nice stadium to see a ball game in. I'm not gonna say it compares to the tradition of Wrigley Field across town, but it's a nice baseball stadium, and there's nothing wrong with it.
No, it looks great when the seats are full, and let's not pretend that we haven't seen the seats full or anything. The White Sox have had success in the past years, but it seems like every time that the success is there, and every time that the fans are all bought in, Reinsdorf and his team takes 5 steps backwards.
Yes, yeah, he kind of rips the Band-Aid off, and it is a pattern that he does, and it's just so disheartening. It really is. It's hard to be a White Sox fan, and the only thing that gives me hope is that Jerry Reinsdorf is 88 years old. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not hoping for anything to happen, but I'm just saying it is inevitable that the one thing you can't outsmart in life is death, and so that is my only hope. And his son runs the Chicago Bulls, and the Bulls are run a little bit differently. Of course, they haven't had success.
They're trying.
But his son has shown they're willing to spend money. They went out and they got DeMar DeRozan and Levine on max contracts, and Vucevic. Now, of course, it's been mismanaged because that didn't work. But still, it's the willingness to try, and I think that's the difference between the Bulls and the White Sox. who are many of the same fans, of course. And the Bulls, I couldn't even believe this, but last year they were still number one in the NBA in attendance, even though they're they're a perennial 500 team. But it's because the fans know, that the ownership is showing some respect to the fans by we're going to try to win every year. We may not get there, but we're going to try. Whereas the White Sox, it's like I don't even know what they're trying to do. There's no direction for this team.
No, there's not. And I don't. And we've talked a lot about Jerry Reinsdorf, but we talked a lot about that. But in pure baseball sense, the coaching staff is not good. I would assume the coaching staff is being put in place by Chris Getz.
Right.
He made the call to fire Pedro Fall, I believe. And
Yes.
he made the hire for Grady Sizemore. So Chris Getz, we've known this for years now. He's not a good baseball mind either. He's just a former player. So when does how bad does it have to get for Reinsdorf? Because last year he said we need a change. We're getting rid of Kenny. We're getting rid of Rick. But he puts Getz in charge. So how much more can you do for Getz to get the boot?
I don't know. And like you kind of said it there, Eric. Like, what has to happen? How bad do they have to be? I mean, you can't be any worse than the worst team.
They're the literal worst team in baseball.
There is no bottom. I think that should be the quote for the White Sox. The Chicago White Sox, there is no bottom.
It's an endless pit.
Just when you think it's the worst, like, oh, well, we could do worse than that. Yeah, it's really sad. And it is sad, too. There was a big athletic piece that came out. And, of course, the White Sox, and one interesting thing about the White Sox is, it's one thing to be bad. It's another thing to be bad, so bad that you're a story, right? And that's where the White Sox are at the level, of course, of breaking the record. And they're a big national story. So there's been a lot of national attention on the Chicago White Sox. And The Athletic did a great piece talking to a lot of former White Sox players. And it really opened my eyes because there's things that we don't even know as fans. Like, for example, the team plane, the White Sox are the only team that charters a plane that has mostly coach seats. Like, all the seats are coach seats, and there's only a handful of first class seats. And like, to you and me, like, that's like, what, that seems like ridiculous. Like, oh, you're gonna complain about flying coach, but
these baseball
players, yeah. When all 29 other teams have charter planes that have first class seats, and one of the quotes in there, I forget what player it was, but had texted a selfie of him on the team's on his new team's plane and said, "Oh, I'm actually in the big leagues now." Stuff like that. It was also mentioned, like, there's this pitching software that tracks pitches or whatever, and it took the White Sox forever to get this software installed, and they were so excited that they had 5 of these machines. But just across town, the Chicago Cubs, they have 20 of these machines. And so they just organizationally, that article showed there's so many problems with the team, and what really boils down to Jerry, because he apparently makes the final call on everything. Like, if you want to make any significant investment in that team, whether you're in charge of training, whether you're in charge of minor leagues, whether you're in charge of the ball club, you have to get his sign off. You have to get his approval. And that, I don't think, is just a way to run an organization. I'm department chair, and I would never say, oh, everything has to come through me, because that's just a horrible way to lead. You have to trust your people that you put in place, that if they're not doing their job, then you fire them and get someone new. But yeah, that's when it all comes to Jerry, that's what makes it hard.
And thinking in an absolute doomsday scenario, we mentioned the stadium relocating in Chicago, but what's happening in Oakland right now is that John Fisher, the owner, has intentionally tanked the team to the point where they have to leave Oakland. I don't think that that's going to happen with Chicago, but the MLB let Oakland tank. They let all this happen. So what needs to happen with the MLB to step in and say there has to be some sort of regulation to where you cannot do this. You cannot put this kind of product out for your fans, because at the end of the day, and I don't think a lot of MLB executives and stuff like that think this way still, it's an entertainment. Sports is entertainment. And the White Sox, no matter how bad they were, I don't know. I'm not lining up to watch a White Sox game, no matter how funny they may be. So what would be the end of the road for the MLB to step in here, because they quite literally have witnessed the worst team in MLB history?
Yeah, it's interesting, and Jerry Reinsdorf used to be a very powerful owner among the owners. He was really the impetus for the 96 strike, or 95, 96 strike, the one that canceled the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
He was like the lead of the owners. He was like the leader of that group. So he was a very respected owner. I don't think that's the case anymore. I don't think he quite has the influence he used to. But I do have some fear that Jerry Reinsdorf is trying to, fisher the White Sox, like what happened to the A's, because there have been reports that he has met with the mayor of Nashville, and then there was actually like a picture of him with the mayor of Nashville. I forget, I guess the winter meetings were held in Nashville at one point, or last year. It was last winter, and he had met with the mayor of Nashville, and no one knows what that was about. So, and this is kind of what Jerry Reinsdorf did in the late 1980s, early 1990s. That a lot of people don't know this, but the history of Tampa Bay's ballpark, Tropicana Stadium, that was built for the White Sox, because Jerry was going to move the White Sox to Tampa in the late 80s, and it wasn't until the last minute when someone in the Illinois delegation, Illinois House, actually literally turned back a clock under the Capitol, turned back the clock so it would not reflect midnight, so they could continue to negotiate this deal to keep the White Sox in Chicago, and so their stadium they're in, was built with, I think, almost all taxpayer money, and so he did that in the 90s. He threatened to move the team to Tampa, and it seems very similar. He's asking for a new stadium, asking for taxpayer funding. He met with the mayor of Nashville. Who knows what's going on?
Very, very sad, and I really do hope that the MLB steps in at some point and either forces a sale. But with the treatment of Oakland, I do not see that happening in the slightest. Joe, we're getting to the end here. What's your final piece? What's your final piece after this abysmal season? We're gonna see history tonight, no matter what. If the Angels lose, then they get their 96th loss in the franchise, which means that's their worst franchise record in their history. And if the White Sox lose, they are the worst team in MLB history. So what's your final piece on the Chicago White Sox this year?
Well, on the White Sox, we'll have Detroit for 3 games, and they'll lose one of those, definitely.
With Detroit playing as they are, yeah.
Yeah, but I just think it's really sad because this is one of the founding franchises of the MLB, one of the original franchises of Major League Baseball, and for them to sink to this level so quickly, it just shows the incompetence at so many levels of a team. And I would like to think that this couldn't happen with most other teams, because at somewhere along the way, there would be someone, and hopefully it would end with the person at the top would say, wait, no, we can't go in this direction. What are we doing? But I don't know. I honestly, I'm speechless, Eric. I don't know what to say. It's just, it's a, it's a S show, and I'm just watching the circus.
Yeah, no, I am completely with you. I have, not being getting the benefit of a Braves fan. I grew up in the rebuild era, so I always kind of have a soft spot for the teams going through it, which is why I so closely follow like the Pirates and the Rockies and the White Sox as I have for the past 2 years, and I just it, it's combined misery that is just it's so interesting to me. I cannot fathom how this happens because I don't think a lot of fans of successful teams, they look at their team, they look at, why are we starting this guy? This guy sucks. Meanwhile, he's got like a 3 ERA. The White Sox are running out a guy who has a 6 ERA on a regular basis, and they're expecting him to be good. So
Right.
it's interesting to me that no one in no and this is all sports. When a fan base is too good, they're having it too good. They start to micromanage and nitpick their own teams. They don't look who has it bad, and the White Sox and their fans have it bad. Joe, you're a very strong individual for staying up with it.
I'm trying.
You do have the Bears and hopefully Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams has looked okay.
Yeah,
He looked better.
we have a glimmer of hope here, but I'll tell you what I can survive this, what I feel most guilty about, and I'm going to have to answer to God at some point, is for raising my three boys as White Sox fans. And, I feel like I just committed a sin there, and a lifelong for them of just misery, so I feel horrible.
It builds character,
Yeah, exactly.
It builds character. Joe, thank you so much for calling in, and we're so happy to have you on and talk White Sox with you.
Thanks so much, Eric.
Awesome.
Welcome back to Eric on the Call, where we are on to our final segment now, and that is talking about the rest of sports we didn't cover today. The wild cards are as jumbled as ever, and there is some chaos caused by what's outside my window. The entire state of Georgia is underwater currently because of. Actually, I don't even think this is an outer band of the hurricane yet. I think this is just straight up a random weather system that knocked us out last night. Either way, the entire state's underwater due to the hurricane, meaning we can't play the series versus the Mets. The Braves cannot play the series versus the Mets here in Atlanta. So, where does that put this series, you may ask? Monday, a doubleheader. Fun. I'm not looking forward to that because here's the thing. Atlanta's going to come in with needing to push all their best pitchers possible. Same with the Mets. Mets could clinch in Milwaukee because the Brewers have already clinched playoff. They've already clinched the in L Central. Goodness gracious, and they couldn't be playing for anything. So the Mets could roll in there and just keep on dominating. But here's the kicker for Atlanta: they play a three-gamer versus the Kansas City Royals, who are going to be playing for their playoff lives, presumably, as are the Braves. So you have to throw Sale and Freed in that series, and I would presume Morton. So that takes out your two best pitchers for a doubleheader on Monday. The fate of the season could be decided by a doubleheader on Monday with the playoffs starting on Tuesday. Absolute chaos. Now, a way to avoid all of this is you root for San Diego if you're a Braves fan this weekend. The San Diego Padres are going to be playing the Arizona Diamondbacks in Arizona. Arizona's still clinging on to that playoff spot. The Braves are right behind them. The Mets, I believe, are a half game behind them now because they didn't play. So you are really wanting Arizona to get knocked out of the playoffs if you're a Mets and or Braves fan. Baltimore has secured the top wild card spot almost indubitably. And the Tigers are out of nowhere. I really don't know what is in the Tiger Detroit water, but they're in the playoffs pretty firmly as the Twins continue to spiral. Who is honking out there? Stop honking. I don't get it. I don't understand what the honking's for. So your wild card teams in the AL look like the Royals, the Baltimore Orioles, and the Detroit Tigers. In the NL currently it is the Arizona Diamondbacks, the San Diego Padres, as well as the New York Mets. Braves are still on the outside looking in. Next, we're going to talk about a little bit of the CFB, and it is Georgia Bama Hate Week. Now, who can win this? Realistically, both of them can. This is going to be a really tough game. Georgia's going to come in a little bit banged up, more banged up than Alabama is. But they're playing in front of the home crowd in Tuscaloosa, which is a huge advantage for the Crimson Tide. The last time that these two met, the Tide really exposed some flaws for the Georgia Bulldogs, and that was a Bulldogs team with Lad McConkey and Barack Bowers, to which, of course, they are not with the team this year. Bama has its own set of challenges. They've looked pretty rocky on the offensive end. There's no cohesion, I'll say that. Again, Jaden Milroe has looked great. The Alabama supporting factors have looked okay. The defense for Alabama, I think, is going to be really key in this context because University of Kentucky's defense kind of held Carson Beck and the Bulldogs down. However, Alabama's defense is much better than that. So, like I said, though, Bama is lacking cohesion, really, and they're under the new head coach. They're under a brand new head coach. So I don't know how he's going to be playing Georgia. I mean, Kirby Smart is a lot more seasoned in this matchup, in this rivalry matchup, especially in Tuscaloosa. Meanwhile, Alabama's head coach is not. So we'll see how that shakes out. For how this game should go down, I really do think that the defense for Alabama is going to give Carson Beck a tough time. It's going to be up to the O line to give him a chance for Georgia. I think the Georgia defense can very well contain Milroe. That's pretty easy for them, frankly. Because Milroe, he has some contributing factors, some supporting factors like Williams around him, but he doesn't have the aces in the holes, right? He just has one or two. So if the defense can hold him back and keep him out of the air, I think that's going to be the real key contributing factor here to a UGA win. I like Carson Beck, I really do. He's a pocket passer guy, but he's a dang good pocket passer. I don't know how much pressure he can take. The O-line is going to have to keep him safe. Just point blank period. They are going to have to keep him safe or else he's going to get eaten alive in Tuscaloosa. My final decision? I'm going to go with Alabama. Playing in Tuscaloosa is a huge factor for me. If this was in Athens, I would have flipped UGA. I really do think it's just down to home field. If you're asking me if it was in a neutral site, let's say we're in the Mercedes-Benz Stadium again, I would give it to UGA still. I think UGA would be able to contain the offensive game for the Crimson Tide more than the Tide could do against Carson Beck. But again, in Tuscaloosa, in Alabama, in Bryant-Denny Stadium, at Saban Field, I'm going to give it to Alabama. Moving on to the NFL, we're going to preview some of the games coming up this weekend. In terms of this week, tonight, it is the Cowboys and the Giants. This is going to be a suck fest. Malik Neighbors is going to be good. Daniel Jones will be okay. Because I just don't believe in this Cowboys defense. This Cowboys defense is a joke. It's a joke comedy at that. There's no run protection for Dallas, and there's no run game for the Giants. So it's going to be interesting to see what comes out on top on that. Just maybe QB sneak the ball a bunch. I don't know. Must win for the Cowboys. The Cowboys have to win this one. They just have to beat the Giants in prime time. You have no excuse not to. It's a bad team. It's going to reel all year long. You have to beat them to wake yourself back up. Then we got the Falcons and the Saints. Oh boy. Last time out against the Chiefs, the Falcons looked pretty good. There were a few bad decisions. It's gonna happen. It just happens against a good team. The worst decision was the wideout run by Bijan Robinson, who was not good on Sunday night last week. But they continue to try to shove him through the defense for Kansas City. It didn't work one time. And so on the final drive of the offensive end for Atlanta, they give a wideout run to Bijan Robinson, who gets stuffed right at the line of scrimmage. That was a play call by Kirk. I don't really know what he was thinking there. I want to hear what he says. He has to say about it, but I don't know. Stupid idea, stupid play call. And I'm sure Kirk, even though he's a veteran, they probably had a conversation like, "Hey, what are we doing here, man?" Bijan hadn't been good all game. He's been getting ran through. But Kirk looked okay. It seems like every week he's getting a little bit better. He did have some shaky throws. He refuses to take a sack sometimes, which is a very bad thing to have, especially against a good team like the Chiefs. But I think what we get most out of this game is we saw that Atlanta can beat the Chiefs. They can beat the Chiefs and had maybe a couple calls on their way, specifically the pass interference in the end zone that was not called against Drake London. Maybe you get a pass on that one. Maybe you get a touchdown on that one. You go up. A lot of maybes, a lot of perhapses, but it is what it is. The refs play for the Chiefs, and we just got to contend with that. Now, looking at the matchup ahead, the Saints. I've never been concerned about the Saints. I've always known that they're like a good team, but they didn't. I knew they weren't world beaters like they were kind of showing off that they were at the beginning of the year. Derek Carr to me is tease. He's such a fluky QB. He's so okay. Like he does something every couple games to make sure that his contract is worth it. But he never really shows out. He's never consistent enough for me. And we saw that. We saw that last week. So I think containing Derek Carr is going to be very important. I trust the Atlanta defense. This Atlanta defense is solid. It's so good. What's interesting for me is if we can get a bounce back game from Bijan for Atlanta. You really do need that, and I think that Bijan is very capable of doing that. So you go in, you make sure that Kirk has enough off pressure for him. O line's going to be critical in this game because the Saints defense is also very very good. Um, but you have to keep your head up. Saints are dangerous. You're in your home stadium, but let's not put the head down. For the Falcons, very very tough team to beat, and a true test for Atlanta because it's a conference opponent. Look, you're not going to be playing the Chiefs every day, right? But if you can beat a Saints opponent that has shown like very explosive scoring, then Atlanta definitely should be looked at as a contender. Then we have the Vikings and the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to be watching this one. This is going to be really fun. Malik Willis has looked really good so far. I'm quite surprised at how Malik Willis has looked, looking back to his old Liberty days. So, good job, Malik. Minnesota's due for a little bit of regression. That defense is very real, but Sam Darnold can't keep this up, I don't think. And for God's sakes, he's an MVP front runner right now. You can't keep doing that for the entire season, can you? Sam Darnold has tons of weapons around him, so if he wants to keep doing it, he is more than welcome to do it. Um, I think Green Bay's very young, very exciting still. Um, I, I I still think they're a little reliant on QB play. So if Malik Willis has a bad game, that the Packers are going to have a bad game. Um, so I'll be interested to see if Green Bay can overcome that. Like if Malik has an okay game, can you overcome that? Can you overcome a very staunch Minnesota defense? Then we got Baltimore versus Buffalo, another very fun watch. John Harbaugh's on the hot seat. You have an MVP versus a MVP favorite. Josh Allen has looked incredible thus far. I don't really think you can't doubt him anymore. Josh Allen is quite possibly the like, maybe third best QB in all of football. He's up there for sure. Dude has legs. Dude can pass it, fling it, whatever. Um, he's looked great. Jackson and the Ravens are coming off a much needed win against Dallas, even though they let him get back in the game. The Ravens, their strength is their run game. Their strength is their run game, and when they're not running the football, they're not doing good. And that's why you went out and got Derrick Henry. You have to give Derrick Henry the ball. I don't understand what this scheming is to not give Derrick Henry the ball, but that's just what you have to do. Lamar can only run so much. Lamar can only pass so much. You have to have a run game. And that run game cannot be QB sneak and Lamar Jackson running all over the field. Give it to Derrick Henry. Give it to the King. Welcome back to Eric on the call. Getting ready to get you out of here this afternoon. I don't know what that was. Gonna get you with some news and notes. Unfortunately, there isn't a ton of news and notes going around the sports world. Probably the biggest one. It happened this morning. It's a bombshell. Derrick Rose is retiring from the NBA after 15 seasons. We all remember D Rose doing incredible things, youngest MVP at 22 years old. So good, happy retirement to you, Derrick. Slow news day, more or less. Humping to baseball. Shohei got 50-50. He's chasing 60-60. He's not going to get it. And speaking on just going off shoot, MLB needs to stop promoting these clubs. I've seen so many graphics of Jose Altuve reaching 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases, or Lee Adames doing 30-20. Like, does it really matter? Like these should be expected numbers. These should be very expected numbers. And just because Acuna and Shohei did it, you don't have to give it to everybody else. Both Shohei and Acuna were very historical. Acuna's was not only a 40-40 season, but a 40-70 season. He stole 70 bags. That's crazy. Shohei's is 50-50. No MLB player's ever done that before. Like, I get it. You want to popularize your players, but you have to find a different way to do it. And let's get to the big bombshell of the week. that I've been itching to talk about for a long time. Um, it's what's happening in Southern California. It's the Oakland A's. They're playing their final game uh, in the Coliseum today at 3:37. Again, this is recorded on Thursday, September 26th. They're playing the Rangers for the final time in Oakland. Um, it's sad. You can probably tell I'm getting a little choked up about it, but it's so upsetting that the MLB and the MLBPA and everyone involved is letting this happen. This is what matters are the fans, and you're robbing the fans of that. Las Vegas doesn't even want the A's, right? They don't. They don't care. It's just another sports franchise. There's not even a plan set up for funding in Las Vegas. Um, there's a really good clip that I saw from a Bay Area newsman. I can't remember his name at the moment. I'll throw it up on screen here. I'll even play the clip after this.
All right, so you heard Fisher's statement. Let me tell you what reality is, okay? John, you tried 5 different, extremely flawed stadium proposals. You never got even close to a shovel in the ground. Yes, Oakland politics is often a mess. I will give you that. But John, you surround yourself with incompetent yes men, and because you were born into a billionaire family, apparently never learned you have to spend money to make money. See Joe Lacob and the Golden State Warriors, your buddy, who still wants to buy the team. John, you're a serial penny pincher. You've destroyed your family's great name and legacy because of your cheapness. As for the statement about loyal A's fans, quote, I wish I could speak to each and every one of you individually, end quote. Seriously? John, we've been trying to interview you for years, but you always choose to remain invisible unless you're begging politicians for public funding. And then you're out in front in Las Vegas.
So, again, just so unfortunate. The news anchor said it. Put the nail on the head, man. I cannot imagine what would happen if one of my favorite teams left just because they couldn't get something worked out, or they just didn't want to stay. Look, it's the final game in Oakland today. It's the final time fans of this storied franchise are going to be able to go and watch this team. It's the final time that they're going to be able to see this team that they saw as kids and then raise their kids to cheer for. It's the final time they'll ever be able to see that. There's just no other word for it than sad. Um, what I'm what I've going on, I thought was really going to be, when I kind of wrote my outline, I thought it was going to be very angry and impassioned speech about, John Fisher and whatever, but just thinking about it and watching all the videos from the fans online coming together and getting dirt from the stadium, filling up in water bottles, and um, getting any sort of memorabilia they can from the stadium, there's no other word for it than just sad. It's just so sad watching what has happened to that team and these fans, because it's not about profit. It's not about making money. It's not about winning games. It's about making memories for fans. That's the whole reason professional sports exist. They exist for entertainment for fans. It's entertainment business at the end of the day. And you're not entertaining your fans. You are specifically going away from that. You are doing everything in your power to not do it. You are not doing your job. I really feel for Oakland fans everywhere. Genuinely just tears me up inside. I cannot believe the cowardice of the MLB, the commissioner Rob Manfred, the MLBPA, and their commissioner Tony Clark for letting this happen. The A's are moving to Sacramento that seats 4,000 people. That's a minor league stadium. It's an insult to the players. It's an insult to the fans. And like I said, there's no true plan for what's going on in Vegas. They're just going. They're just going to leave. You figure out a joint agreement. That's what you do. This is Montreal all over again. And we all know how good of a decision Montreal was. little bit of a pipe bomb there. It was completely off script. Something that I did write down in my outline though was um, 5 words that I will forever say until it happens, or extenuating circumstances happen to make it happen. Sell the team, John Fisher. Sell the team. Again, I'm so sorry, Oakland. So sorry to your fans. You didn't deserve this. Give you some games to watch this weekend in the NFL. Again, tonight is Thursday Night Football with Dallas and the Giants. I don't even know if I'm going to watch that. That game's going to suck. It's going to be painful to watch. Um, then we have Saints and Falcons on Sunday. Saints are in the bins against the Falcons. I talked about how big of a matchup that is between the two sides. They have to see who's real and who's not. That'll be an insanely fun watch. Everything gets heated between those two guys. Then you have Minnesota and Buffalo, or excuse me, and then you have Minnesota and Green Bay. Um, Another great watch. We'll see how these two QBs who kind of found themselves in this position out of nowhere, both due to injury. Goodness gracious. We'll see how they perform. Um, that's going to be just a good old fashioned fun game of football right there. Cincinnati will be in Carolina. Carolina coming off their first win of the year, where it proved Bryce Young was the problem. Sorry, Bryce Young. But Cincinnati's 0-3. And I need to see more out of Joe Burrow than just him showing up in a weird outfit. Sorry. Buffalo's going to be in Baltimore. Very fun watch. We'll see if Baltimore carries the momentum that they had against the Cowboys. Again, I think it comes down to running the ball for Baltimore. You have to run the ball because you have so many fast pieces on the field. When you don't, you're just limiting yourself. So we'll see how they look. And then on Monday Night Football, the quietest 3-0 team in the NFL is Seattle. They'll be at Detroit versus the Lions. That's going to be really good. I do expect the Seahawks to kind of fall off a little bit. I think they've kind of gotten away with a little bit of a cupcake schedule and or catching some teams off guard. So we'll see if they'll keep going. But if you want to watch the Seahawks and you want to watch the Lions, Jared Goff looked good in his last outing. And you have DK Metcalf looked really, really good, especially when Geno Smith was throwing bombs to him. So we'll see if Geno Smith can keep it up. We'll see if DK Metcalf can keep it up and give us a good Monday Night Football Monday Night Football game. Then we go to the CFB. Oklahoma is going to be at Auburn. That should be pretty interesting. Auburn's been going through an up and down season. They've already swapped QBs. Auburn, I don't think was expected to do a lot at the beginning of this year, but I think they definitely expected more than that. Georgia Southern is going to be at Georgia State. Southern, not State, by the way. That's from my man John Connolly out there. That'll be a fun watch, as always, for the Statesboro faithful to make the drive to Atlanta. Ohio State's going to be at Michigan State. That'll be fun. Michigan State previously undefeated coming into their first week, not undefeated, versus a good Ohio State team that I picked to make the championship game this year. And then we have Georgia versus Alabama. I already gave it to Alabama. I think they're going to come away with this victory. But again, an insanely fun watch for all those to enjoy on Saturday. In the MLB, starting this weekend with a weekend series, New York is going to be at Milwaukee. That's the Mets at the Brewers. New York can clinch this series. They certainly can, and just depending on extenuating circumstances. That doubleheader on Monday in Atlanta could become completely moot. I do think they're going to play at least one game, but if everything persists as it does and the Diamondbacks keep sliding, which they play the Padres, it definitely happen. The White Sox are going to be at Detroit. The White Sox are making me very angry because they refuse to lose. But they're going to be against the Tigers, and the Tigers are fighting for playoff life. So I don't think the White Sox are going to not break that record. They're losing. Kansas City is going to be at Atlanta. Both of those guys fighting for their playoff hopes. You're going to see Sale and Fried in basically playoff form this weekend, so make sure you tune into that. Sale's going to win the Cy Young. Love to see him in playoffs. Hopefully it happens. And then San Diego will be at Arizona with playoff implications on the line. Playoff implications everywhere, baby. All having to do with the wild card. Love to see it. Diamondbacks looking to cause a little bit of chaos for the Mets and the Braves. I would be very grateful if the Padres just easied this up and just swept the Diamondbacks. That'd be very fun. But, it is what it is. Well, that's going to be it for Eric on the call. Thank you guys so much for watching a different video, different type of video and format than we are used to. Hopefully, everyone is staying safe with the weather out there. I know it's going to get really bad this weekend. Supposedly, um, make sure you're just stocking up. Make sure you're safe. Check on your loved ones. Do all this, that, and the other. Um, and yeah, I hope you have a good weekend. Stay safe, make good decisions, watch some sports, tell a friend, tell a frenemy, tell a family member that Eric's on the call, and we'll see you next week.